Hello there! Welcome to this lore video. My name is Tusky, and today we're going to discuss my favourite race, the Trolls. The Trolls are tall, agile, and muscular. They have a mixture of elven and orc characteristics, with long fangs and long ears. But don't jump to conclusions. Trolls are not the result of an elf and an orc after a drunk evening. No, instead the Trolls are perhaps the oldest living race on Azeroth. They have long arms and legs, both of which are very strong, and they have very sensitive ears and noses. They have 2 fingers and a thumb, and like the Tauren, don't really wear shoes or boots, mostly out of a preference to be barefoot. Because of this, the underside of a Troll's feet are often as hard as leather. All Trolls have special characteristics to their skin. Trolls that live in forests can support plant life to a limited extent, allowing a small layer of moss to grow over them. Jungle Trolls, on the other hand, are covered in short fur. Desert Trolls' skin is actually like leather. Additionally, all Trolls are very well known for their ability to regenerate terrible damage at a very fast rate. This has always given them a large advantage in battle. Many Trolls believe that the ability to regenerate comes from the Loa, which are the pantheon of gods that the Trolls worship, and that, indeed, the Loa could take away this regenerative gift on any troll that defied them. There are tales of trolls recovering from grievous wounds, from fingers and toes to the tail of Zul'Gurub the Void, who regenerated almost his entire body after standing in a pool of shadowy flame. Although called primitive, a lot of trolls are very clever, and facing one in combat is not an experience to relish. With blood thick enough to hold, bloodlust that can turn them into savage monsters, the ability to berserk at will, and heritages of cannibalism and dark voodoo, the Trolls are a violent race. They have a unique way of speaking as well, with accents ranging from Cuban to Jamaican. In the oldest of old days, before any empire, the Trolls were in small tribes. They were led by shadow hunters, powerful and spiritual leaders that inspired loyalty in the Trolls and terror in their enemies. Over time, the Trolls began to build cities, and the shadow hunters' influence dwindled. However, even today, a shadow hunter is widely respected by fellow Trolls. They have the unique ability to commune with the Loa at will. But once, the Trolls were rulers of the largest, most powerful empire on Azeroth. Vicious warriors, talented casters, and ruthless enemies, the Zandalari, the earliest known Trolls, ruled Kalimdor about 16,000 years ago, before the Sundering split the world apart. There is argument to say that the Trolls may be the first ever race to have existed on Azeroth. The Zandalari are troll royalty, often called the elves of the Trolls. They are taller, stand upright, and have beautiful faces. Compared to other Trolls, they are pure and angel-like. Heavily dependent on a caste system, these Zandalari became the progenitors for every troll tribe in existence. If you've heard of it, it was a Zandalari once. Darkspear, Skullsplitter, Bloodscalp, Witherbark, Sand Fury, Drakari, Raventusk, Amani, Smolderthorn, Vilebranch, Shadowpine, even the mysterious Dark Trolls. They were all part of the Zandalari tribe once. They were the lower castes, and eventually they left their empire. The Zandalari let them go, seeing them as young and rebellious. They thought the other tribes would come back, snivelling, and beg the Zandalari for their old place in the empire. But that never happened. The lower castes of the Zandalari eventually split into 2 distinct groups: empires, the Amani of the Middle Forests and the Gurubashi of the southeastern jungles. Smaller tribes did exist in places such as the Cold North or in the deserts of the southwest. The Amani and the Gurubashi Empire became the 2 most powerful troll empires on the planet. Meanwhile, the Zandalari tribe kept their distance and watched. Waited. The Amani and Gurubashi empires had their differences, and there was some animosity. However, wars were rare. They had a common enemy, you see, the civilization of Akir. Now, you may have never heard of the Akir. They were intelligent insectoids with power in the far west of the world. They were clever, hostile, and they expanded fast. Eradicating all non-insect life in their path, they threatened to wipe out Kalimdor. It was the Trolls that held them back. For thousands of years, they fought the Akir. Never had they succeeded, though, and true victory was never really claimed. It was only due to persistence that the troll empires shattered the Akir, splitting the kingdom into 3 parts. To the north fled the Akir that eventually created Nerub. They became Nerubians. To the south fled the Akir that created Kiraj. They became the Silithid, otherwise known as the Kiraji. And even further south, unknown to all but themselves, fled a colony of the Achaea that eventually became the Mantid. It was during this time that the Zandalari, who were fighting as well, found the Mogu Empire. The Mogu were rulers of a smaller area that we now know as Pandaria, and as the Zandalari and the Mogu met, they were primed to destroy each other. They were both strong, ruthless, and ready for war, but they realised that they had other enemies, weaker enemies, and that a war against each other would weaken the victor to such an extent that any of their enemies could potentially destroy them. Neither empire wanted that, so they turned their backs to each other and formed an uneasy alliance. This is why you see Zandalari trolls in the Throne of Thunder. They were involved in Pandaria's history, and the Zandalari are the closest thing the Pandaren have to bogeymen. There's a reason that when you first meet Lorewalker Cho, he recognises you if you're a troll. So, with the Achaea civilization shattered, the two empires, the Amani and the Gurubashi, went about their lives. They didn't really expand too much, and for a time, things were relatively peaceful. However, it was during this time that a small faction of trolls, dark-skinned trolls, broke away from the Amani Empire. They founded for themselves a small colony in the heart of the continent. They were adventurers, explorers. There, in the very heart of Kalimdor, they found something. A well, brimming with untapped power. This was the Well of Eternity, and it transformed these trolls, mutating their bodies and minds, and they became the first elves. After they discovered the well, these dark trolls, now calling themselves the Kaldorai in their new language, began to rise in power. Their expansion was fast, and despite the two empires' attempts to keep them at bay, the dark-skinned night elves built an empire that was pretty much unstoppable. Why, you ask? Magic. The Kaldorai wielded magic that the trolls had never seen before. They were a superstitious people, ruled over by their lower. The Achaea never used magic like this, and the Night Elves had practically no trouble in completely destroying the twin empires. They systematically dismantled the trolls' defences. They cut off supply chains. The trolls were completely unable to counterattack. The elves' magic was just too strong. It was in this period of time that the Kaldorai destroyed the twin troll empires. The Amani and Gurubashi empires fragmented in only years, and every troll knows of this. There is a deep, lasting hatred for elves within troll culture. They were the ones that destroyed the twin empires. It was also because of the elves' overuse of their magic that the Burning Legion was lured to the world. The demons destroyed a lot of the Night Elves' empire, and although there are no tales of the trolls fighting against the demons, it's fairly likely that what remained of the shattered troll empires was also attacked by the Burning Legion. This war against the demons was called the War of the Ancients, and at the end of it, the Well of Eternity, the Night Elves' source of power, imploded. This completely shattered the world. Shockwaves destroyed the landmass and broke the world apart. This was the Sundering, and it is the reason why the continents of Azeroth are in the shape they are to this day. Large chunks of the Amani and Gurubashi empires, well, what was left of them, were stranded on the easternmost continent. They exist to this day in Quel'Thalas and Stranglethorn Vale respectively. The twin empires were over. The troll civilization had nearly been entirely destroyed. Only fragments remained. It was this period of time that shaped the history of the trolls more than any other. It was the beginning of the end, really. Their empires were in ruins. Their armies gone. Many centuries passed after the Sundering, and they were difficult for the trolls. Disease, famine, death, they were all commonplace. The entire race was in decline, headed towards extinction. Desperate times. And so, what remained of the Gurubashi tribe resorted to desperate measures. They sought aid from forces unknown to them. Unknowably ancient and vastly powerful, the Gurubashi found a Loa. Now, both troll kingdoms and the Zandalari shared and still do share a central belief in a pantheon of primitive gods called Loa. The Gurubashi fell under the sway of a very, very dark Loa. His name was Hakar the Soulflayer. He was an evil spirit, and he offered the Gurubashi tribe exactly what they wanted. Power. Hakar taught the Gurubashi ancient secrets of blood magic, and he helped them expand their civilization across most of Stranglethorn Vale. He gave them great power, but he wanted something in return. Souls. Sacrificial souls fed to him daily. He was a spirit, and he had no physical manifestation, but he wanted one. He wanted to enter Azeroth physically, that he might terrorize it and feed. The Gurubashi were happy to give in to his demands. They constantly found sacrifices for him to feed from, and a whole sect of the Gurubashi priesthood, known as the Atalai, became his loyal priests and prophets. But their toying with the Dark Lower did not go unnoticed. The Zandalari, whose large tribe had mostly survived the Sundering, sent emissaries from their island nation of Zandalar. These Zandalari reasoned with the Gurubashi and helped them realize that they had courted with something incredibly bad. Both the Zandalari emissaries and parts of the Gurubashi turned on Hakkar and his Atalai. Civil war began. The war itself was not well recorded, but the results are pretty well known. The budding Gurubashi Empire was shattered again, although this time the Gurubashi were able to grasp victory. Just as the war began to turn against them, they succeeded in destroying Hakkar's avatar and banishing him from the world. The Atalai were driven from the Gurubashi's capital of Zul'Gurub, but they found a new home in the swamps further north. There they built a temple, known as the Temple of Atal Hakkar, in honor of their fallen god. They worshipped and served him from there, but they were tiny in the grand scheme of things. For now. The rest of the Gurubashi tribe began to separate after the civil war had ended. The Skullsplitter, Bloodscalp, and Darkspear tribes moved away to find their own place in Stranglethorn. Peace, a fragile peace, but peace, had settled over the broken empire of the Gurubashi. But rumours still remained. Prophecies were told of the return of Hakkar, that the wrath of the Soulflayer would be great indeed. The Gurubashi weren't the only shattered empire to have issues. In the northern forest, the Amani tribe was weak, but slowly regaining power. It was during this time that the High Elves of Quel'Thalas moved to the north and founded their kingdom. They did so directly on top of Amani's sacred ground. Underneath Silvermoon lies an ancient troll city. The High Elves may not have been the Night Elves that destroyed their empire, but they were elves, and they were spitting on the Amani's sacred heritage. As you could probably tell, this pissed the Amani off, and although conflict sparked, the High Elves had magic, and this scared the superstitious trolls away, for a time. The Amani relented for 4,000 years. But they did not forget, nor did they forgive. They laid low, plotted and schemed. Their numbers grew. Finally, an army of trolls charged out of the forests and assaulted Quel'Thalas. The elves had magic, but they were completely outnumbered. Their spells couldn't save them this time. They thought their civilization was doomed, and so in desperation they sought the aid of the humans to the south. They promised to teach the humans of Arathor in the Ultric Mountains magic, in return for their aid against the Amani. Together, the humans and elves stood against the trolls. They used fiery magic to set them ablaze and prevent them from regenerating their wounds. The troll armies attempted to flee, but they were chased down and slaughtered. Although the Amani survived, they never really recovered, and never again did they rise as a nation of united forest troll tribes. Although, this wasn't the last the world would hear of the Amani and their hatred of the elves. Now, we skip forward. The Horde, not the faction, but the horde of orcs that poured forth from the Dark Portal and began the Second War, had destroyed Stormwind. They marched north towards Quel'Thalas. It was at this point that the forest trolls saw their chance for vengeance, a chance to destroy the elves. So, led by Zul'Jin, their greatest leader to date, the forest trolls joined the horde. They were a great asset during the Second War and were able to strike against Quel'Thalas. Victory against the elves was assured, until the leader of the horde, War Chief Orgrim Doomhammer, turned his troops back. Instead, he decided to launch an assault on the humans of Lordaeron further south, and pulled back on the attack from Quel'Thalas. Zul'Jin was furious. As the horde was fractured and defeated from within, the forest trolls returned to their hiding places in the northern forests. Only the Raventusk tribe retained any loyalty to the horde, and it was small. The orcs were placed into internment camps, and the troll race ignored the horde until the Third War. It was during the Third War that Thrall, the new war chief of the horde, led his people west. He broke them out of their internment camps and, at the behest of a prophet who had shown him visions of destruction, led the orcs away from the eastern kingdoms. They stole ships and sailed west, towards Kalimdor. But their journey was perilous, and during a dangerously close encounter with the Maelstrom, their ships crash-landed on a lone island. There, Thrall and the orcs discovered a tribe of trolls called the Darkspear. Led by a wise witch doctor known as Sen'jin, they revealed that the island was under attack, both by the humans of the sailor nation of Kol Tiras and the local Murlocs, who had been driven to a dark purpose by a sea witch called Zarjira. The Murlocs and the humans were in a position to destroy the Darkspear tribe. Then, Sen'jin received a vision. He saw an orc, a Farseer, who would drive the humans away, save his people, and lead them from the island. This came to be. Telling the war chief of the danger, Sen'jin, Thrall, and his forces drove back the humans. As they did, the Murlocs struck and captured them. Thrall awoke and, with the help of the captured orcs and trolls, broke free from their prison and found Sen'jin. He had been sacrificed upon an altar to the Sea Witch, and he lay dying. Although the Murlocs had been killed, the Darkspear's tribal leader would soon be dead. With his last words, Sen'jin begged Thrall to take his people from the island, to save them. He dreamed of the trolls being led by Shadowhunters, as they were so long ago. Thrall agreed to save Sen'jin's people, and Sen'jin's son, Vol'jin, took command of the tribe as the Sea Witch, in her rage, began to destroy their home and sink the island. It was because of Thrall and the orcs that the Darkspear still exists today. And funnily enough, it is because of the Darkspear and their leader Vol'jin that the Horde as we know it still exists today. As the Third War ended, the trolls of the Darkspear and Raventusk tribes were granted positions in the Horde. They remain loyal to this day. The Darkspear and the Raventusk were really the only tribes with any kind of stability. Over the course of the different expansions, the other tribes fell into more and more dire straits. In Tanaris, Zul'Farrak, the capital of the Faraki tribe, was mostly destroyed by adventurers. In Stranglethorn Vale, Hakar's loyal followers, the Atalai, were finally able to bring forth the Dark God in Zul'Gurub, and under his wing he took the Gurubashi tribe in again. The Zandalari, once more, came to stop them, but this time they were enslaved by Hakar's power. Eventually, members of the Alliance and Horde destroyed Hakar and the enthralled priests of the Zandalari. The Gurubashi tribe was next to destroyed. Shortly after the Blood Elves joined the Horde, Zul'jin reappeared, and furiously began plans to attack the world. They had committed an unthinkable atrocity within Zul'Aman. In their desperation for power, they turned on their own loa, manifestations of the bear, the dragonhawk, the lynx, and the eagle, and killed them. They drained the power of their own loa into champions, and prepared to unleash them on the world. But before they could, an adventurer called Bud Nedrek hired adventurers to enter Zul'Aman and steal the treasures within it. The treasures were stolen, and the adventurers carved their way through the city. Eventually, even Zul'jin himself was slain. The legendary warlord, driven to the absolute edge to keep his people proud and strong, was killed. The Amani were mostly destroyed. In Northrend, the Drukhari capital of Zuldrak came under attack from the Scourge. They too were desperate, and just like the Amani, they sacrificed their own loa to gain power. And again, the Zandalari came along, this time to chronicle the end of the Drukhari Empire. Eventually, Zuldrak was lost to the Scourge, and although the leader of the Drukhari wasn't slain, the vast majority of the tribe was either dead, or worse, undead. The Drukhari tribe was mostly destroyed. The Cataclysm struck. More trolls were killed. Although the Darkspear and Raventusk were stable, the other tribes were not. The Shatterspear, driven against the Night Elves by Garrosh Hellscream's horde, were mostly destroyed by the Kaldorei. The Amani, the Drukhari, the Gurubashi, the Faraki, they were tiny. They were worse than tiny. They were nothing. But then, the Zandalari made their move. Certain factions within had been watching and waiting. Not long before the Cataclysm, a prophet named Zul had been given visions of a great dragon destroying the world. He saw Zandalar's destruction, their island sinking. He begged the leader of the Zandalari, King Rastakhan, to do something, but he didn't. He sat complacently on his throne, and so Zul gathered followers, Zandalari that would heed his warnings. More and more flocked to his side as the storms of the Cataclysm grew worse. Eventually, Zandalar, the shining capital of the trolls and birthplace of troll civilization, was reportedly destroyed. It's unknown if it really is, but Zul had set out with his followers into the world. There he convened a meeting of the Amani, the Gurubashi, the Drukhari, the Faraki, and the Darkspear, the biggest, most powerful tribes that still existed. Zul spoke passionately of how the troll empires had been all but destroyed, that their only hope now was to band together and form a new empire, a united Zandalari empire. He promised their cities restored and their people brought back into power. Every troll leader agreed, pledging their allegiance to Zul and the Zandalari, except for Vol'jin. Loyal to the Horde, the Darkspear leader turned his back on the trolls, forever sealing the Darkspear's fate as tied to the Horde, for their own people were now their enemies. Zul and the others began to plot. They reinvigorated Zul'Gurub and Zulaman, and Vol'jin quickly sent emissaries to combat them. He himself aided in the attack on Zulaman, quickly putting an end to some of the Amani's schemes. But the Gurubashi tribe, reinforced with the Zandalari, pushed into Stranglethorn. Slowly they were pushed back, and eventually Jindo, the tribe's leader, was killed as he attempted to steal the power from the spiritual form of Hakkar. Somehow, some way, Jindo had jailed the Dark Lower, but adventurers were forced to set him free in order to defeat the mad chieftain. In return for his freedom, Hakkar let the adventurers go, and then he vanished. But Zul and his Zandalari empire were not destroyed by these events. They moved on, and revisited home, that is, whatever home was left. There they found more followers, and with a massive expeditionary force, moved to find their old allies, the Mogu. It was because of the Zandalari's reinforcements and their dark magic that Lei Shen, the Thunder King, was reborn. On the Isle of Thunder and inside his fortress, the Zandalari made their final stand. Hundreds of them were killed as the Horde, the Alliance, and the Shadowpan descended upon them. Their Dinomancy did little to stop their defeat, and slowly the Zandalari were pushed back. Lei Shen was killed. The Zandalari's plans to invade Pandaria were halted by Vol'jin and the Shadowpan. But Zul was never seen. He was never killed. At this point, we can only assume that he has returned to Zandalar, whatever's remaining of it, to either beg King Rastakhan to allow his return and unite the tribe, or perhaps to usurp him. For, as Lore Walker Cho says, the true power of kings and emperors stems from the power to aid their people. The moment they fail, they cede their power to the one who can. The Zandalari are still out there. The force that was sent to Pandaria was just a scouting party, really. But despite their constant struggles, the trolls have suffered defeats. They have survived through the harshest of times and watched Azeroth as it has changed. The world was theirs once, and many trolls, including some of the Darkspear, dream of their former glory. They dream of a world where the trolls ruled, and where the other races were slaves, or worse, extinct. Some of them will stop at nothing to see those dreams through. Some have given them up and turned to allies to forge their future. But the trolls remain some of the greatest and most terrifying warriors on the face of the world. And without them, Azeroth would be very, very different. The Zandalari prophecy is alive and well, and the prophet Zul, who in the native tongue of the trolls simply means great, is still out there. One day he will make his move. And if he succeeds in uniting all of the Zandalari behind him, then the world will tremble when he finally reappears. But, for the most part, the trolls remain alive, through the Darkspear and through Vol'jin. Their allegiance is to the Horde, to their new war chief, and to the races that ally with them. They stand together against any that would threaten them, including their own kind. That's it for this video. I hope you enjoyed it and found it helpful. If you have any thoughts, questions, comments, or anything like that, you can contact me using the links in the description, or just leave a comment. I'm more than happy to talk to you guys about lore, the trolls, or anything else. Thank you very much for watching, and I hope you enjoy the lore of World of Warcraft.